it's funny because we saved this for number three. Now we didn't save it, and I don't think we're doing it in chronological order, but it is the meat. It's probably where we're going to spend a lot of time today. And you have it down as Trump indictments. I'm just going to call it Trump's entire year in court. Uh, the man's got he's got 91 charges. I think he's been indicted 4 times, 91 charges. His he and the civil suits. Um, I don't know where do you want to start on discussing Trump's year in defense attorneys, right? I don't know how we can. I don't know what a simple, cute tagline would be, but where would you want to start on the whole Trump issue?
So I want to actually start with the idea that I think this is the greatest political story in the history of this country. And it feels so normal to us. Part of it is because we knew that he was doing this stuff the entire time. But John, do you realize that he was indicted 4 times this calendar year, including mugshot, including an arraignment, including the documents case, the Georgia case, the DC case, a possible new case here is coming shortly. But if this was any other year, any other person, it would be the biggest political bombshell. And John, it's not one kind of indictment, right? It's not one kind of, oh, I did not have sexual relations with that woman indictment. It's actual 90 counts of felonies and different states, federal, local, etc. Um, and we'll see what ends up happening in Arizona or Michigan or whatever the new states come from. But this is the biggest political story I think ever. Right, last year we ended the year with the biggest story being the Mar-a-Lago raid, and that's just a raid. He was actually indicted for that this time. We will end this year, John. I think this isn't a prediction show, but we will end this year with him at least getting a guilty count in one of them, and I think we're taking it for granted. I think it's still fascinating that we're taking it for granted. He's still the political front runner. He has a legitimate 49-50% chance of being the president still in a year's time, and he's still facing all of these counts. And I just find that fascinating that the country hasn't gotten. I will say a decent percentage of the country hasn't even want to get rid of him. They just want to bring him back. I think if we don't suss this out, if we don't keep him away, I think our country ends functionally. And so, yeah, I think this is the biggest political story ever, to be honest, John.
But it ties back to what we opened the show with, and so many other issues. But it ties back to the whole Israel Palestine issue. Um, Trump's people are going to be with him no matter what. Remember, as Democrats, on people on the left, progressives, liberals, we have the luxury, or at least we think we have the luxury, of telling Joe Biden, if you don't get it right, we're not going to back you. We have the luxury of saying the other guy is a criminal. The other guy is going to set us back as far as democracy and everything else, but we're still not sure whether or not we want to get with Joe Biden. Um, it's a binary choice. So when you talk about that percentage of the chance that Trump's got, um, it speaks poorly to our country. And before I deal with the left, it speaks poorly to the right. Um, I will tell you this for people who think, oh well, we should go younger or what have you. I guarantee you this: the type of person that would say Donald Trump is a better option than a Joe Biden is not the type of person who all of a sudden would turn around and say Gavin Newsom is a better option than Donald Trump. Think about it. And
Yeah.
when I say think about it, look at the Republican primary field. There's 3 governors. 2 of the 3 governors, and I'm talking specifically about Haley and Christie, are kind of quasi reasonable. I DeSantis is just an idiot. But there's no good goddamn reason for Donald Trump. Forget Donald Trump's polls against Joe Biden. There's no good goddamn reason for Donald Trump to be whipping their butts the way they are. Both Haley and Christie, and I am not going to get behind a Republican. I'm not going to get excited about a Republican because they're all crap. Even the good ones are crap. But would you agree that what we've got in Donald Trump is, and Donald Trump's success, Donald Trump's popularity, the strength of Donald Trump's support is scary. And that's not a reflection to me on Biden. That's a reflection to me on how sick our country is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, John. Part of it, I think, is I think about this a lot because part of it, I think, is a little bit of revisionist history. I think there's a good set of the country that believes all of COVID happened under Biden, when in fact the majority of it happened under Trump. I think there's a good part of the country that believes, I don't mean in a conspiracy way, I mean just how they remember things because it all kind of blended together, John. I think there's a good part of the country that believes all the lockdowns happened under Biden because maybe a lot of them did happen in blue states, right? Illinois, California, New York, that they just kind of lump in Democrats together. I think that's part of the problem is because it's like bombshell after bombshell after bombshell of news that I think people forget that things actually happen in a specific order. I think another problem is generally that people think I don't want to say this, but there's a revisionist history with George Bush, right? The second, right? Where he's very fond now, and the poll numbers on him are very good. And people don't remember 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. People barely remember the economic crash and the housing market and all that stuff. And all of that happened under Bush. But because just time goes away and people forget and people move on and people die, and all of a sudden there's this little bit of kind of revisionist history, right? You see it with the next generation where they'll stumble upon an Eminem song and be like, wait, was Eminem problematic? And all of us are like, we've already hashed this out. We already had the trial. Like, just leave it alone, right? And so I think that's part of the problem too. Is Trump's now been out of office for 4 years, and some people might struggle, so they still feel like, oh, it's Biden, it's Biden. I'd rather take 4 years ago than this, and so I think there's some sentiment of that. But it comes down to this also, John. I think I was arguing with somebody over text the other day because they brought up that I think the majority of the country hates Biden, and I'll go to as far as to say I think there's a, and you taught me this lesson early on in the pod. Social media is not real life, and I think because we spend a lot of time on social media, and there's a lot of negativity in the shade room and all this stuff, that it kind of could feel like that. But I think reasonably, if you go out and you talk to just normal Americans, when I say normal, I mean just everyday people who aren't necessarily paying attention every single day, I think they'll really feel that Biden is a clear cut better choice. Um, but people love a horse race too, John. Right? It's the Skip Bayless Stephen A. thing. It's the Super Bowl leading up to it. It's the national championship game. People, that's just inherently American, where you just have two teams that are going against each other. If the media depicted it accurately, I think that we would be a little bit looking at it a little bit differently. We'll talk about it when we talk about the economy in a little bit. But I think there's just a lot of factors there. I think ultimately Democrats have won every single election since 2018. And I think we have to just continue to keep our eye on the ball and move forward.